This video is about percents. A percent is a form of a ratio that compares a number to 100. We can form proportions to find percentages. So if you ever wondered what percent on a quiz or test you got and you don't have the calculator, like let's say Becky scored 16 out of 20 in her test, what was her percent? You can just take 16 over 20. The top one divided by the bottom one. Your calculator would have found 0.80 to be the answer. How do you change it to a percent? You multiply that whatever you get times 100. And your answer is 80%. If you're not too familiar with multiplying by 100, you can really just move the decimal place to the right twice. That's how 0.8 becomes 80. Here's a couple of common percentages and their fraction and decimal equivalents. 1/10 is 10%, we write that as 0.1. 20% is 1/5, we write that as 0.2. 33 1/3% is 1/3, we write that as 0.3, repeating. 40% we can write as 2 over 5 or 4 over 10. This is 0.4. 50%, 1 over 2, and we can write this as 0.5. 3 over 5, 0.6. 2 over 3, 0.6 repeating. 3 over 4, 0.75. 4 over 5, 0.8. And 1 over 1, and that's just 1. So those are some common ones that we might see, and hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of how to convert between the three, fractions, decimals, and percents. So let's try to set these up as proportions. If we're going to find 30% of 80, we can use a proportion. 30 out of 100, sorry, got a little zero happy there, 30 out of 100 is equal to what number out of 80? This is the same thing as taking 30%. You can solve it using a proportion. If we cross multiply, we'll get 2400 is equal to 100x. If you divide by 100, you get that 24 is equal to x. Another one, if we want to find 120% of 15, we can say 120 over 100, because we are converting that to a ratio, and some number over 15. If I cross multiply, I have 120 times 15, which is 1800, and 100x. If I divide both sides by 100, I get 18 is equal to x. What percent of 45 is 35? What they're really asking you to do is take 35 over 45 and set that equal as some number out of 100. So what we can do is we can take 35 divided by 45 and we can multiply by 100. That's probably the most common way. Or you can cross multiply and you have 3500 is equal to 45x. And if you divide 3500 by 45, you get 77.7. Repeating. Couple more. 230 is what percent of 200? So we can write 230 out of 200 is equal to x out of 100. This is the way to solve percentages using proportions. So I have 230 and then 2 extra zeros, because that's how you can multiply quickly, is you just count the zeros, and there's 3 of them. And on the other side I have 200x. If I take 23,000 divided by 200, I get 115 is equal to x. Now you probably noticed that it might just be faster to say, how do I get from here to here? I divide by 2. And the same thing is true here. 230 divided by 2 is 115. 38% of what number is 85? So these sentences are all short, and they look very similar, but they're asking very different problems. So 38 out of 100, that's 38%, of what number is 85? So should 85 go on the top or the bottom? And it turns out they're asking to put on the top. 38% of some number is 85. So that's why sometimes setting it up as proportions can help us avoid some easy mistakes. If we cross multiply, we get 38x is equal to 8,500. And we can take 8,500 and divide by 38. And we get that x is equal to 223.68. I'm rounding, but there we go. 20 is 0.4% of what number? So 20 over x is equal to 0.4 out of 100. If I cross multiply, I have 2,000 is equal to 0.4x. If I take 2,000 and I divide by 0.4, I get 5,000 is equal to x. Next up, the serving size of a popular orange drink is 12 ounces. The drink is advertised as containing 5% orange juice. How many ounces of orange juice are in one serving? Well, who has a tip calculator on their phone? Ever have a friend or parent who can figure it out faster than you can type it in your phone? Ever had to pay taxes for clothes, games, or tickets? It turns out there's a pretty fast way to find 10% of a bill. If you wanted to find 10% of something like 12, which is a number of ounces here, you can just move the decimal place over, and it's 1.2. And if you wanted to find 1% of that, you're going to move the decimal place over twice. So this would be 0.12 ounces. If you wanted to find 5%, just start with 10% and cut it in half. So you're at 0.6 ounces. Those are some tricks to quickly find percentages of any amount. I used 12 here. And notice all we are doing is we are moving the decimal place over and using powers of 10. So let's try that again. We have now lunch at Texas Roadhouse if it's $27.88. Well, how can I find 10%? I move the decimal place over, so that is 278.8. I know that's 10%, so I want that plus half of it. So if that's about $2.80, I'm going to add about $1.40. And now I'm at 2 plus 1 is 3, $4.20, thereabouts. Some quick math. The sales tax rate is 7.25%. Find the sales tax on a book that cost $19.97. So what you can do is 19.97, and you can multiply this by 7.25 over 100, because it's given as a percentage. If you weren't sure how to do that in the calculator, you can always just put parentheses around that, and this will actually jump you straight to the answer. I tend to multiply by 0.0725 because I'm familiar with moving the decimal place over. If you wanted to find the actual 15% tip, you could take $27.88 and multiply by 0.15 because we started with 15%, which is 15 out of 100, and we just take that original 15 and we move the decimal place to the left twice. And it turns out 15% of $27.88 is $4.18. So my guess was pretty close. Here, if I go 1997 times 0.0725, the tax is $1.45. Alice Ailes? Maybe Alex? I don't know. Got 60% of the questions correct on a 60-question test and 80% on an 80-question test. What percentage of all? Okay, so we're combining. We have a 60 question, which we got 60 out of 100. And then we have an 80 question, which we got 80 out of 100. And then we're going to add these proportions together, or these ratios together, I should say, and we will have some number correct out of a total of 140, because that's how many questions that Alex answered. So let me add the fraction bar there. And if you're trying to find 60% of 60, you can just take 60 times 0.6, but you can also do the cross multiplying. Anyway, this will be 36 out of 60, and this one will be 64 out of 80. So 36 plus 64 is 100 out of 140. If you do that in your calculator, you get a decimal. This will be 0.7142, etc., percentage. If you want to turn this into a percentage, the next step is to multiply by 100. And all that really means is you move the decimal place over twice. So if we were round to the nearest percent, I would say 71%. This year, the chickens on a farm laid 30% less eggs than they did last year. If they had laid 3,500 eggs this year, how many eggs did they lay last year? So 30% less. That is equal to 70% of the old total. So I'm going to say 70 out of 100 is equal to 3,500 out of their old total. And I can cross multiply. So 70x is equal to 350,000. If I take 350,000 and I divide that by 70, I get that x is equal to 5,000, which is how many eggs they laid last year. So if you can figure out this proportion thing, it can help you avoid mistakes. Next up, each day Jacob eats 40% of the pistachios left in his jar at that time. At the end of the second day, 27 pistachios remain. How many were in the jar at the start of the first day? So we started with some number x, and we multiplied by 60 over 100 because we ate 40%. And we multiply by 60 over 100 again because we ate another 40%. And at that point we had 27. How could we work backwards? Well, it turns out we can divide to cancel these things out. If we want to do percentages in reverse, instead of multiplying, we can divide. So if I divide by 60 over 100, this one goes away. If I divide by 60 over 100, this one goes away. So that's what I need to do over here. I need to do this twice. 27 divided by 0.6. Another version of 60 over 100. Whatever I get, which turns out to be 45, I'm going to divide that by 60 over 100 again. And this gives me 75. And that's how many pistachios were in the jar at the start of the first day. Number 14, the table below shows the kinds of foods that are fed to the cats and dogs currently boarded at a pet care facility. What percentage of the dogs are fed only dry food? So out of all dogs, which there are 25 of them, how many are fed only dry food? That's this column. The answer is 2. So 2 divided by 25 will give me a decimal. And then I multiply that by 100. So this is 0.08. Did you figure out how to multiply that by 100 yet? You can just move the decimal over twice. And this becomes 8%, or 8 out of 100. You can also set it up as a proportion. 2 is to 25 as what is to 100. And if you like to cross multiply, great. If you happen to notice that I can just multiply the bottom by 4, well then multiply the top by 4 as well. And you'll get your answer, 8. And that's it.